recording. Go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, thanks, Adina, and thank you for taking the time to organize all this. It's nice we can have this exchange between the PhDs and just in general, because we haven't had our consortium meeting this year, so it's nice to touch base with all of us. And with that said, I will share my screen here. And yes, is everyone seeing this okay? Well,
yes.
Okay, great. So this is obviously, as you can see, taking up my whole screen. So if you do have like an urgent question, please just unmute yourself and ask, because I won't be like watching the chat very much. Okay, so yes, as I think most of you know, my PhD funding and topic basically is based on the waste fuel project, which most of us here are involved in, and that stands for Waste at the Food, Energy, Water Nexus, and we're involving urban living labs, which is what the ULL stands for, as a vehicle for reducing waste inefficiencies at this food, energy, water nexus. I'm a member of the Rotterdam ULL, which is in charge of Work Package 6. And according to the project proposal, this Work Package 6 project goal is for all of us in the consortium to work together to develop replicable models and a useful knowledge toolbox with real-world partners and avoiding this one-size-fits-all approach, focusing on real-world impact. So this was still quite vague, I guess, when we began. But what we decided to do was develop a sort of decision-making heuristic that can help guide decision makers within the context of a circular economy, as we interpret it in the Netherlands, or more generally at the food, energy, water nexus with these waste inefficiencies in a more informed way. Because what I had experienced in, let's say, empirical observations and also in literature I had read was that a lot of people are actually very interested in progressing towards a circular economy, but maybe they don't have the background in terms of environmental assessments knowledge, or yeah, they don't really understand the gravity in the difference of qualities of impact that something can make. So I'll explain that a bit more later, what I mean. But anyway, to help offer a tool to guide decision makers through these decisions from start to finish, I developed what I call the circular decision-making tree, which I'll show you in just a moment. And that's based on my knowledge and background of industrial ecology. That's what I did my master's in. As I said, environmental assessment techniques like material flow analyses or life cycle assessments. And I noticed the waste hierarchy, which is very common in the UK, as I've seen, and also in other countries within the EU. But that doesn't give any sort of guidance in terms of step by step. It shows you a ranking of, for example, reuse is better than recovery, but it doesn't really guide you in terms of how to go about that. So this is what I've created, and unfortunately our time in the presentation is limited, so I don't have time to explain the whole tree, but I'm happy to answer questions about it after the presentation for whoever's interested. What I can tell you, the main point is the left side is the role of the organization, and this is what I focused on the most in terms of how can we let's say, get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of our resources, so human resources, financial resources, policy efforts, etc., in terms of pushing the circular economy forward. And the second column is about how can we upscale that? Is it possible? Talking about economies of scale here, how would it differ in different geopolitical contexts? And the third column is simply about more further analysis. So as you guys saw before, our approach was to work together with the urban living labs within the consortium to develop this replicable model and make an impact. And the circular decision-making tree is very much focused on creating real-world impact because it does this translation of, let's say, environmental sciences as a background, but it makes it very like user-friendly, let's say, and something you can use very quickly. And I think that's important when we're trying to engage with practitioners, because yeah, they oftentimes don't have the time, or they have a million things going on. And so for it to be effective, it needs to be accessible to them. So I created this tree, which I've shown you guys, and working together, we conducted workshops, or in Brazil, for example, there were group interviews, but in the Netherlands, Brazil, and the UK. And we also hope to have some answers from Kevin later in terms of engaging more stakeholders, because he did give us some information, but it wasn't, let's say, in a replicable methodology as we did it in the other three. And I just included some pictures. This one's courtesy of Jana. She took this screenshot, but this was in the Dutch workshop that we conducted online. I believe we had 18 participants, and they all ranged from, I don't know, members of think tanks, action researchers, practitioners, environmental consultants. And it was really interesting to have this multi-sector stakeholder input on the impact of this tree. And we just went over essentially the usability of the tree. Did people see some flaws in it? How did they understand the internal logics, and do they agree with them? Was the design user-friendly, etc.? So this was also done in Brazil, and shout out to you guys for translating the whole thing to Portuguese. I think that's really impressive. And they also did 2 group interviews there with academics and practitioners. And same in the UK, we had a nice group there as well. And altogether, we, or I guess at this point, I took the feedback that we got and integrated that. I'm still working on a final draft of it, but integrated it into the existing tree, which you've seen already, to basically improve it, make it more robust, and make it more usable across all of these different contexts. Based on common things that we heard in terms of positives and negatives. So yeah, very briefly, the results were that essentially everyone was quite supportive of it. And I think everyone agreed that it was at least a step up compared to what we have now, which is basically nothing, translating science to practice in this specific context of decision-making in the circular economy. There were quite some critiques about how it didn't include like a cost-benefit analysis, for example, and we had discussions about capital as well. But the main point of this tree is to essentially translate existing schemes like the waste hierarchy into something actionable and operational. So these other existing schemes also exclude things like the economic element, which of course is a shortcoming, but there's always, let's say, compromise between complexity and inclusivity and simplicity and usability. So this tree is essentially the result of, yeah, the best balance that I believe there is between these two things. So yeah, as you heard, we tested it in these 4 different, really very different contexts, excuse me, and that was very interesting to see what common things came across and actually what differences there were, which I'll also detail in a paper later, so you guys can read that once it's published. And in terms of next steps, I would say it would be really interesting if someone could take the circular decision-making tree and implement it into a business context or policy context and really see how it would work in real life. Because although we did incorporate practitioners in terms of feedback and testing the tool, validating it, it wasn't as if we were at their workplace and were trying it out on a daily basis. It was more their reflection on the tool. So I think it could add a lot to this first draft of the circular decision-making tree if someone or multiple researchers could also test it in practice and see what kind of impact we can really create. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That was wonderful. I have a quick question, and then we have a couple of minutes because we've got lots of talks. So if others have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself right after me. So my question is a little bit general, is how transferable this tool is between sectors and different stakeholders. Is it unique to a certain type of users, or it's transferable across multiple sectors and even multiple case studies? Is it just focused on reducing of waste in a circular economy or others?
Yeah, thanks for your question. And it's designed to be transferable across sectors and also other types of contexts. So for example, these socio-political contexts, as we've tested it in these workshops. But what it does essentially is helps you analyze the true contribution of an innovation to a circular economy, how much that will make. And then if you're, for example, an investor trying to choose between some SMEs who are offering a quote unquote circular innovation, which one do you want to invest in if your value is most impact towards a circular economy? And it's interesting because I think most of the time the flashy ones, which are very interesting for people, for example, here in the Netherlands, there's a big initiative to fish water bottles, plastic bottles out of the canals, and then they're broken down, 3D printed into a couch or something really cool. It sounds quite nice, but in terms of like true contribution, it's not a transformative decision. It's just keeping us locked into kind of how we're doing things now. So by taking this plastic out of the canals, the same amount of plastic will still be going into the canals each year. So it's not making a big impact. And the circular decision-making tree would help guide you to consider more strongly, the long-term impacts and the transformativeness of the decision and the innovation.
Cool, nice. Anybody else has a quick question? Sue, go ahead.
Yeah, it's another general one. Sorry, Rachel.
Okay.
I wondered if you had identified anything common across the application that you've used with your tree across the UK, the Netherlands, and Brazil, and whether you'd find common things and the opposite, not common things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, which is why I'm just loading a page of my draft, because I'm writing a paper on this, as I said, and actually I've just made a nice table which can very well answer your question.
Okay, good.
Let's see if I can do that. I can just summarize it quickly for you, because this is obviously like quite a lot. Yeah. Yes. So first of all, if we can zoom in. So this is just in general, the circular decision-making, reception, and feedback. And we have it broken down into the Netherlands, the UK, South Africa, and Brazil. And then this is what your question is essentially, across all contexts, what were the valued functions or the perceived assets of the tool, and what were the critiques of it in terms of implementation and its logics, etc.
Okay. Ooh,
so yeah, I'll just summarize it for you. You don't have to read it all, but I'm also checking it for myself because I don't have these memorized. But in general, everyone across all contexts said it's very useful, the internal logics are sound, and its best value, or one of its most important points, is that it really highlights this hierarchy of different contributions to a circular economy. And it distinguishes between, or it helps you distinguish between different forms of circular innovations, and breaks down essentially which ones would be the most impactful. If also, for example, you're choosing a policy to support, or you're in a business and you're trying to take on some kind of circular innovation, but you don't know what kind. Everyone agreed that would be pretty useful to use the tree in that case. Also, it was interesting to hear across all the contexts, everyone thought it's an interesting discussion tool. So even if it's not something you would use in practice and follow it by the book, it would be really interesting, people said, to create discussion across, for example, departments within a different within one company, or to create transparency along the value chain, so that everyone's on the same page, essentially what circularity means. And in terms of, let's say, learning points or critiques, what I mentioned already, it doesn't have this element of cost effectiveness. There is one question about it, but it's not comprehensive, obviously. And yeah, of course, it doesn't account for power as well. So this can be all nice in theory, for example, but then if someone above you in power doesn't like what you have to say, then the tree does nothing about that, which makes sense. I think this is too much to go into all the differences, but let's just say in the Netherlands, it was really focused on circular economy, whereas in the UK, we branched out a little bit and we talked about a circular economy architect. So the tool allowing you to be someone who can articulate between systems and that can act as boundary object.
Cool. Rachel, for the sake of times, I think we will all wait for your paper to get submitted, and we're good luck with it. It sounds really exciting and comprehensive.
Yeah,
okay.
Thanks very much, Rachel. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Eleanor. And you can share your screen, Eleanor.
Okay, is that showing? Hopefully.
Yes, it's showing there. Now it's good.
Okay, I'm Eleanor. I work for the Department of Economics in the University of Bath, and I'm going to be talking from some learnings from the Bristol Urban Living Lab about the benefits of reduced food waste in particular. So our project goal was really to explore the non-market and socio-environmental benefits of reduced food waste along the food waste cycle for Bristol, and to explore what reductions in energy and other resource usage might occur from changes to food waste reductions. So initially we wanted to do the whole food waste cycle, but we felt within the scope of the project, we had to limit it to households, but we hope that we've shone a light on a certain aspect of the food waste, the food, energy, water nexus. So, the approach that we took was to work with a group of stakeholders in Bristol to map out the quantities of household waste in Bristol, starting with the resources embodied into food, or sort of baked into food, literally, as it arrives at the household, and then as it starts to leave the household, where does it go, and how is it then processed, and then to start looking at what impacts those different routes have on the environment, and then we monetize those. So, so for the resources embodied into food, we used a life cycle assessment, which described the resources that are used from the outset, from the change in land use associated with different food products around the world, through to the resources of processing and moving food to the stores, and then for the CO2 and those kind of resources have used from the household to go shopping and buy the food and bring it home. So then we worked with the Bristol Waste Company to understand the composition of food, which was important. Basically, there's two key routes for food in Bristol. About a third of food in Bristol is placed in food recycling caddies and left on the doorstep to be recycled, and they're taken to anaerobic digestion facility just outside Bristol. But about 41% of food in Bristol is just thrown in the residual bin, and that waste is the data is gathered on weight, so we have to rely on composition studies to understand what proportions are actually food in there. And there's also informal food disposal as well, so quite a significant proportion of food goes down the drain. So water and sorry, not water, juice and beer and things like that get down the drain, or they get put into gardens. So we then mapped how the waste is then disposed of, and then explored using known studies of comparisons between the environmental impacts of anaerobic digestion versus incineration and landfill, which is hardly used for the Bristol context, I have to say. Bristol's quite unusual in that they recycle quite a high proportion of their waste compared to the rest of the UK. But the last point in our chain, if you like, was the point where we valued the impacts by monetizing them to understand the, trying to use a monetary value, if you like, to describe the societal cost of the environmental impacts so that we can compare the different sizes of resources. So compare the effect of CO2 to PM10, for example, in a meaningful way, because a lot of what we're trying to achieve here was to give back to our stakeholders evidence that they could use in their campaigns to help them encourage people to be more efficient about how they recycle food and how they prevent food waste.
Pues si podrías ayudarme a mí.
Sorry, was that a comment? Was that somebody's microphone?
Renato, can you mute your microphone, please?
Okay, so once we'd established the size of the issue in Bristol, we also established two scenarios to model the results. So the first one is based on a local campaign in Bristol, which is known as Slim My Waste, which is just trying to encourage people to get the food waste out of their residual bins and into the recycling bins. So, and the other one is a national campaign, which is Love Food, Hate Waste, which aims to reduce the actual quantity of food that's actually consumed. I mean, the amount of food that's actually bought and then wasted. So it's reducing it at source rather than trying to encourage recycling. So we felt it was quite important to compare the two. But in both of these and in the results that I'm going to show you, we're looking just at the 20% level, so a 20% change in behaviour. So just a few results. So this is just the to describe the present impact of Bristol's food waste. So, and what you're seeing initially is an illustration of the annual impact of resources embodied into food as it's produced before it becomes wasted, if you like. So, so this is just to describe there's a considerable amount of resources there, from global warming to impacts on air and sea and water quality, and also impacts on human health. And then the next illustration that I show you is the effects of waste disposal. And this is, you have green here and red. The green shows the benefits, basically because a lot of waste in Bristol is not put into landfill, but it's used in some way to generate energy, which removes the demand for grid electricity and reliance on fossil fuels. So we see quite a few benefits here. But there are also negative impacts of the disposal of waste. So most particularly here is particulate matter relating to how you dispose of digestate from anaerobic digestion. That can lead to deteriorations in air quality. But so the last little illustration is just to show you, I don't know if you could do it, it's just to describe the huge difference between these two things, that the positive impact of reduction in global warming from energy production is only less than 1% of the total amount of energy that goes into the food in the first place. So this next slide just shows you the scenarios between, and here I'm just comparing the difference between recycling of 1 ton of food versus reduction of 1 ton of food. So what we see here with more recycling, we see in green, these are the benefits. So reductions in primary energy demand, reductions in water use, but again, some of the problems that come along with that, so increases in particulate matter formation. But what we see with the reduction of 1 ton of food waste, to compare the two, is you do get the loss of the benefits of energy generation, but they're completely outweighed by the reduction of resources that go into food, that are embodied into food. So so I'm showing you the waste hierarchy, which we mentioned already. It does kind of reinforce that, but the principle that it's always better to reduce waste at source if we're looking at it from a non-market and socio-environmental point of view. However, a significant proportion of wasted food is not edible, and things like tea bags and bones and things like that. And we recommend following this process that anaerobic digestion still shows the most positive benefits, despite the issue over particulate matter. And so we'd still absolutely find there's really important benefits from moving to recycling and away from throwing waste into residual bins. So, but what I would say is that we're just illustrating one node of the nexus, and very much this is about the non-market impacts. Households are part of this macro economy, and the change in their behaviour will affect overall prices and incomes from the beginning of the food cycle, from farmers all the way through to waste disposal. And I think this is going to be explored in much more detail in the macroeconomic work, but it's very interesting to have this illustration of this wider environmental impact. So, and just one final thing is that our stakeholders will be using some of these findings during the Bristol Going for Gold campaign, which is they're aiming to have the recognition of their significant and positive change on a range of food issues that they've been trying to work towards, and that hopefully is going to be going forward this spring. But that's all from me. Just a few slides.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. That's pretty illuminating. Does anybody have any questions for Eleanor?
I do.
Go ahead, Jana.
Even so, I'm sitting on Marco's desk right now, but anyway, we had to change for family reasons. Anyway, my question is, Eleanor, you said you only looked at one aspect of the food waste chain, but do you have any reason to assume that for food waste emerging from other sources than household food waste, that this would play out any different? I mean, my assumption would be it doesn't really matter where the food waste would come from, if it's commercial sector or something else. Wouldn't you be quite reasonably be able to assume that your ratio between prevention versus sort of reuse wouldn't be that play out the same? What would you speculate would be the case there?
I think that there's one thing that we didn't take into account was the change in behaviour about the types of food people buy when they choose to consume less. So there's some information about that people, for example, buy different kinds of food that have a different environmental impact. Sorry, I'm not saying that very well. But for example, people buy different cuts of meat, or they might buy pre-prepared or pre-packaged food, which has more packaging. If there's less food, but they might buy more high quality food. So there's more waste further up the food chain, if you like. So at the farm gate, which may not come into play, or they may buy foods from different parts of the world. So there's an effect there. Okay. But I agree. I think food is food in terms of environmental.
But maybe not, as you just said. That's actually a good point. Yeah.
But there is this other aspect of the macro aspect, really, about the marginal cost of recycling and the viability of recycling, and also the effect that it has on incomes, which I think Tayan is doing some really interesting work on, and how that interacts then with the environmental impacts.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Eleanor. I think our next speaker is Ali. Would you share your screen?
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm glad to have the great opportunity to share the progress of my research today with you. As you may know, my research is about system dynamics modeling of urban food, energy, water resources in a circular economy context. Today, I'm gonna share the outcome of my research so far. I will also discuss what I'm currently doing and what the next steps of my work will be. During the first phase of my PhD, my main focus was on the literature around circular economy and nexus approach. I was particularly interested to explore the relationship between both concepts. For this, I adopted a bibliometric analysis and a thematic analysis to scrutinize the state of art in both literatures, quantitatively and qualitatively. The finding of this study, which is at the final stage of publication process, suggests that less than 1% of literature around each concept have used both circular economy and nexus together. On the contrary, both literature overlap significantly in terms of relevant journals and most frequently used words, which are around 50%, more than 50%. Not only there is a significant intersection, but the thematic synthesis of the relevant papers shows critical interrelation and interdependence between circular economy and nexus approach. This means that circular economy without a nexus approach overlooks the impacts on other resources. So it does not necessarily lead to sustainability, while the nexus approach without integration with circular economy can hardly find its way to policy and practice environment, which is currently known as one of the main challenges of nexus thinking. And it calls for nexus action or nexus doing rather than just nexus thinking. Based on these findings, I then developed an integrated circular economy nexus framework, which can boost the potential of both concepts. As you can see in the picture, the left figures illustrate the common understanding of the concepts in the current literature, while the right figures shows the integrated version. Of course, there is too much detail here, but we can come back to this later at any time if you need more clarification. As I mentioned, I use system dynamics modeling to study food, energy, water nexus in a circular economy. What is system dynamics? System dynamics is a method to describe, model, simulate, and analyze the nonlinear behavior of complex systems over time. The building blocks of system dynamics models are stocks. You can think it as water reservoirs or containers, flows like inflow and outflow water taps, which are connected to the reservoirs, variables which can be parameters and constants affecting the flow and creating feedback loops. And these are all illustrated in that picture. System dynamics modeling can definitely help to analyze the behavior of complex nexus systems. However, as Box and Draper says, and you can read it in the screen, it's good to remind that all models are wrong, but some are useful. Here, these three modules illustrate a draft of my generic food, energy, and water nexus model. The stocks and flows represent material and energy flows within each subsystem. The red arrows are connectors which transfer information between the stocks, flows, and other variables. This model basically shows first how much food, energy, and water flows in and out of the ULL at different stages of supply chain. Second, how much energy and water is consumed and wasted at each stage. And finally, how changes in one flow can affect the other resources. As you can see in the right chart, my preliminary findings of the drafted Bristol model shows that first, agricultural production generates the highest amount of food surplus and waste in Bristol, but unfortunately there is no data around it in national and subnational level, so we don't know much about this stream. Regardless of that, households produce more than half of the Bristol's food surplus and waste, with a slightly lower rate of waste generation than food services, 16% comparing to 18%. The bottom table shows that almost half of the post-farm gate food waste in Bristol is treated in AD plant, Geneco AD plant, which is significantly higher than estimated average for the UK. I understand that these data are slightly different than Eleanor's, but I'm happy to find out about the different assumptions in our works. Finally, the next step of my work will be more on adjustment and refinement of the Bristol model. And once finished, of course, I will start the modeling of other ULLs. While the lack and inconsistency of data, as well as the huge complexities, are the main challenges for my work, I look forward to overcome this through teamwork, collaboration, as well as my upcoming interviews with Bristol partners and stakeholders. Thank you very much for your attention, and please feel free to raise any comment or question around what just discussed.
Thank you, Ali, and thanks for sticking to the time allocated. If we have any questions, please unmute your microphone and feel free to ask Ali. If not, Eleanor, do you have any idea why there is a difference in your estimate? Is the data coming from different resources?
It could be. We focus just on household waste. I don't know if Ali included all waste that comes through Bristol, because I know the anaerobic digestion unit takes a lot of supermarket waste. Sorry, I just realised my microphone was off. There's also, we incorporate informal disposal of waste as well. So I'm not sure if that has an effect on the change in the figures between ours and Ali's as well.
Ali, do you have any response to that?
Actually, I didn't hear the first part of what just Eleanor said, but I think definitely it returns to different assumptions of which we have made. Mine is when you work on like modeling from with different data from very different addresses, you can see that there are very different datas which are not inconsistent. For example, I have seen that Bristol Waste says that we send 10,000 kilogram of waste, food waste, to Geneco, but the Geneco says that we received 30,000. These all shows the inconsistency in the data. But anyway, I'm very interested to see Eleanor's data. I think we have already discussed this before, but
we had a lot of issues with data in Bristol in that it's so complex there. It's so difficult to model, and the data changed as well. So we had updated data on waste composition, which had changed quite significantly. So yeah, there's so many sources and routes for waste and where it's coming from and how to estimate it. Yeah, I can see why we'd have differences in the assumptions.
Yeah, but it's great to see that you're communicating with each other and trying to find out the roots of that. Okay, well, thanks again, Ali. And I think our next speaker is Bingzi.
Thank you.
Hello, glad to see you, everyone. Today I will give the topic about critical review of the. Sorry, this screen couldn't see my PowerPoint. Very sorry about that. And critical review of the governance of phosphorus and the implication for future institutional research. And I will try my best to sorry, just a little bit. Yeah, okay, got it. Sorry about that. I will try my best to answer your questions after the presentation. So before we talk about my research aim, I will give you about some background of the current governance practice and the performance. The first one is the changing governance meaning of the phosphorus from pollution to both scarcity and the pollution, and also the cost and benefits is another situation we might need to think about. For example, the low price of phosphorus rocks in compared to the high price of the recycling techniques. And also even some countries such as the European countries also have been developed a market for recycled phosphorus products, but right now it's quite limited market in the societies. And from science perspective, there are 4 main challenges involved in studying governance of phosphorus. Basically, it's related to the data collection and the measures on how phosphorus flow influence the public health and the global climate change, etc. So my research is aimed to further improve the understanding of the governance system of the phosphorus and figure out associated factors affecting the phosphorus nutrition flow from the social science perspective. And then I highlight 2 main theoretical and the policy dynamics when we analyze the governance of phosphorus. The one is circular economy. Another one is more about the geography economy, because the natural phosphorus is quite is quite distribute globally inequality. And another analytical framework, as basically our previous present have been highlighted, is waste hierarchy and zero waste hierarchy. So in my paper, I used the integrative review method, and this method is an advantage to reconceptualize the topic and find a new analytical perspective. And also the existing literature in the field of phosphorus also highlighted the importance of this integrative approach to analyze this complex governance practice. And also this integrative.
We're still on your title page, so I don't know if you're moving forward with your presentation.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I had to move it. Have you seen it?
Now we're on a slide called integrative review method.
Okay, sorry about that. Just no idea what's happening with it. Yeah. So just to talk about the method I used to do this critical review, and I highlight 3 significant points, and also this method of being highlighted in the existing literature in the field of the governance of phosphorus from the science perspective also. So the data collection, we try to use to triangulate the secondary data from journal paper, government and corporate document, etc., to make this research result more reliable and convincible. Yeah. Okay. So And right now, I concerned how we could use zero waste hierarchy, this analytical framework, to think about the phosphorus governance. Have you seen the new slides? Have you seen this new slide? Yeah, okay, thank you. So basically, it's this zero waste hierarchy. This analytical framework is developed based on the waste hierarchy, but also incorporate into the circular economy, this idea into this this analytical framework. That is a main difference between waste hierarchy and zero waste hierarchy. So we developed 3 analytical levels, that including upstream levels, middle stream levels, and the downstream levels, to think about how we could to recognize the dynamics of the nutrition flow. The upstream level is more about the stakeholders who can make a decision on the use of phosphorus related goods. Such it's not just about the local and the national authorities, but also including the individual and organizational buyer who can waste and disposing their phosphorus based material and the goods, etc. The middle stream level is considered treatment plants and the practice, such as the water company, wastewater company, etc. And the downstream level is think about the non-recycling and the non-capturing activities in the field. And for this paper, our research is mainly considered the upstream level. And the one of the key point is think about the excise from the governance perspective. So that means we might need to think about who have the access to governance of phosphorus, as we talk about like the person who can waste dispose their phosphorus related practice, etc. And so here is talk about the theoretical analysis of the reduction of food waste as a prevention approach to phosphorus loss and waste. As we understand, like, because given the limited presentation time, I just talk about like the UK, and also think about like how we can think about this approach to reduce the phosphorus loss and the waste. Basically, based on the Alina's research, we talk about like if we reduce the food waste, that be my good and have positive effect on the environment. But from another way, like from the economic perspective, we're not really sure to what extent the reduction of food waste can affect the protection of food and then affect the national economy. It's not just about money, also about the employment, etc. And also in the UK, it's not just about suffering from the food waste, this issue, but also have the food hungry issue. The government, the role of the state is not just about like deal with the waste management. Also, there is a quite increasing topic about how we could. It's just like there is another increasing debate towards whether we should use the waste food to feed the people in Hungary. So that is all of the topic and the thing. From my perspective, we need to think about how we could reallocate the resources, and it's not just about look at the role of the state, the role of the market. We need to rethink about the three type of the mechanism, that including the state, the market, and the social sector, to think about how we could do that, etc. And also this table is based on the the literature review. I reformat the factor affecting the food waste and related to the phosphorus nutrition flow. And so my papers still like developing, and the key message from this presentation is about we need to think about the upstream level factor to design the effective governance strategy by thinking the full perspective, access, use management, and the benefit. Another thinking is about like, for example, how we think about the reduction of the food waste and the prevention approach to the phosphorus loss and waste. So we might need to have a systematic and comprehensive of the understanding of the governance structure of phosphorus, and that's the figure 2 is the framework I'm working on to think about how I can develop this paper and provide a more clear idea, like give a whole picture of the governance structure of the phosphorus. Thank you so much, and thank you for the whole wasteful team support me to do this work. Thank you. Yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Binxie. Questions for Binxie? Okay, I have a quick question. What was the most challenging aspect of compiling all of this information for you?
Yeah, that is a good question. The most challenging thing for what I understand it is like the governance practice is really complex. And so like we might right now, I think about like how could we develop the new technique to deal with it. But right now, from my background, my research, we might need to think about whether do we have any like strategy use like work on, I mean, have a positive effect on the food waste management, and how we could develop and facilitate this strategy to do more, or rather than just focus on the technical things. Because like we it's not just to look at the one part of area to think about this really complex practice somehow. Sorry, do I answer your question clearly?
Yeah, yes, Binxie. I think Marco had his hands raised, so you can go ahead, Marco.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go. One quick question. You've approached this from a fairly theoretical point of view, and I was wondering if you think your analysis is different or would be different in different countries, as in the let's say the 4 countries that we have in the project, or is this UK specific, or is this going to be global, and would it be more or less the same for no matter where on the planet that you look into this problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. The thing is like back to this natural resource, like if you could see this more clearly. Oh, sorry. Yeah, try to do that. Yeah, because the phosphorus is quite like a natural source, as you know, like because it's a distribute inequality from the global perspective. So for some countries, like they don't have like a phosphorus scarcity this problem, but for UK and most of European country, they face this. So that is a different country might have a different problem about it, and also. But one common issue is about pollution. So I think basically most of countries based on this is, but just like they suffer from different degree, etc. So I guess from right now, I can't give you exactly answer how each country to do it, but they might need to think about like their natural resources and also think about the diet behavior, etc. from the food perspective. But for the global climate change, I mean, like it's not just about one country thing. It's about all of country in the world to think about how we could do that. And the phosphorus has one of the important factor affecting the global climate change. So that is the thing we need to work on it. Even right now, we have no idea how exactly the phosphorus affect the global climate change. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bingzi. I think our next speaker is Matt.
Thank you. You might want to plug in your laptop soon, because you will lose out very quickly, it seems like. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I will get my return. Thanks.
Matt, are you sharing your screen?
Yeah, thanks. 1 second. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, let me just see if it works full screen. Has it changed full screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for your time. I tried very hard, Adina, to stick to your guidelines on the structure of this thing, to keep it short and to the point. My name is Matt Johnston. I started off my PhD in Cape Town with Kevin, so the Cape Town ULL, and then moved to the UK, but just to Coventry University. So I can't really say I'm affiliated with any particular ULL, but I also added Rotterdam. So these are the three I'm really interested in my research. I'm going to go through the first parts of the presentation to get to the results with the little time I have. So this is the problem that I started off with, that I've really identified, and it's about waste valorization. And coming from South Africa, it's just impossible to ignore the social aspect of sustainability and just very, very persistent inequalities and very stark inequalities between people. And for me, this is an aspect of sustainability that's really neglected in general. So I wanted to bring that into this question of waste in cities, and how the solutions that are being put forward really interact with inequality and issues of power relations. So the question is, how then does different institutional power structures, if I can put it that way, interact with food, energy, and water waste minimization? And it's been very useful, although it's also made it very difficult with limited time and resources to look at 3 different cities at the same time, because it is a very contextual question. The objectives, firstly, was just to analyze theory with a literature review and compare that with real urban politics that we're observing. How is the space of waste and recycling in particular being contested politically in each city? Secondly, to map a sample of these institutions in each of the city regions. I adopted the city regional scale, and I'll explain a little bit later why. But also to map their relationships to one another, these institutions working with waste. And I really tried to zoom into those that are benefiting from waste. And lastly, to simulate the dynamics of waste minimization in different ideological scenarios. So that's very loaded. This is the only picture that you see here now in the whole presentation. I'm sorry for that, but I've got very limited space. Just these are the theoretical areas that I looked at in my literature review. The most recent was political ecology, and that was thanks to Ulrich's recommendation. And these things complement each other quite nicely, and I'll explain why in a bit. My first real method, or the first prong of my mixed method, was social network analysis. And the picture you see there is kind of an output that comes from that. It really just gives you all the nodes, and each of those little dots represents an institution. In this case, particular network parameters are represented by the size of each node, and the color legend is right there. So I delineated between institution types and nexus types. So basically it was just to get to who are these institutions, how do they relate to one another, what does the network structure look like, and now let's start engaging with them and see what's happening. And to do that, I've been looking at qualitative data as well to really just give some depth to the social network analysis, which was quite shallow because of COVID. I've had to do everything online. And amazingly, I mean, most of it's worked out, but a lot of it has been very limited as well, if you can't physically interact with people. So this has been done in rounds. In the beginning, I used the engagements in ULLs, like workshops, to just get a sense of who's involved in working with waste in every city. I tried to attend each of those kinds of workshops, although I couldn't attend all of them. But then I also used literature to just test the impressions that I got in those fora. And more recently did a desktop research exercise to get a sense of the political profile, formal kind of party political profile of every city. And right now, that's what's ongoing, is interviewing with specific institutions that I've now confirmed are kind of central to the whole system. And lastly, agent-based modeling, which is my last step. This has also been done in iterations, the first being very, very simple, deriving assumptions and network dynamics from theory, then from the social network analysis that I showed you just now. And now, at the moment, deepening that with some of the insights I got from qualitative analysis. And lastly, it would be a combination of all the methods and the results that I got from those. So this is very wordy, sorry, but I'll try and explain this in simple terms. The literature review, what I found was that circular economy theory and few nexus theory really focuses on money and matter or material. And there's very little emphasis on inequality and how these theories really address that problem. Just reinforcing my kind of natural concern that that is something that's being neglected. I was really interested to see how there is a lot of literature talking about waste, and solving the urban waste problem is feeding into new kind of disruptions of established power hierarchies. So this led me to social philosophy and political ecology. It really focuses on that theme. But my intent is to look at how existing institutions and existing relationships of power are being deepened or expanded by using the pursuit of urban sustainability as a kind of a tool. So for me, what I'm seeing in the literature is there's this need and a call for an active coalition between social justice and physical sustainability interest groups. From the social network analysis, I found that old centers of capital are still very much at the center of these waste management networks, and that being, big companies and local government, as well as regional and national governments, are in every case very much in the middle of everything that's happening. Because I've had to do this from a distance electronically, I've also found that there's a very strong politics of appearance in these institutions. ICT is really at the center of it. And these institutions do a lot of effort, it seems, to create a certain image of themselves as being progressive and socially sensitive. Just a general outcome was that energy and recycling operations as a category really feature most prominently in each city. And it's probably because those are the most profitable. Now, yeah, I mean, the concentratedness of power in each of the networks that I found may seem as a problem at first, but it's also an opportunity. It gives one the sense that if there was a will to change or a will to transform the way waste is managed in that city from those more central agents, it could really spread and normalize quite quickly. But the fact that that's not happening gives one the sense that there isn't enough influence from external or peripheral kinds of institutions with a different way of thinking about what we need to do with waste. In the qualitative analysis, I got the sense that there's a lot of dissonances of different kind of scales of power. For example, local versus national, just conflicts of interest there, different kind of political philosophies at play, and also the issue of money and how public finances do or do not flow between national and local governments for the specific purpose of managing waste in a different way. And then there seems to be a near universal distrust in institutional capacity, or more specifically will, to transform the way things are done. And something that I've really found interesting is that third sector waste agents are, it seems to be co-opted into the existing power structures rather than being able or willing, probably able, to actually disrupt those structures. The agent-based modeling, the results that I can share with you now are very much tentative because I'm still busy with that. But just at the basis, things like time and demographics, the degree of diversity in the population that you're modeling in each city, and really the assumptions that you make at the very beginning, initial conditions, seem to be very important rather than more technical issues and small changes. I looked at economic incentives, thinking, for example, of the value of waste in financial terms, what role that plays. I think collectively, and that's one of the limitations of agent-based modeling, is you look at the system as a whole and how individual agents affect the system as a whole. Economic incentives seem to be effective at that group level, but it obviously doesn't account for more individual struggles of people at the lower end of the hierarchy and how certain policy interventions necessarily affect their lives. And then again, I mean, it's a qualitative question of for who. Being able to change the parameters of the agent-based model in any given way, it always begs the question of what are the trade-offs going to be, because you assume that there are conflicting interests. That's at least the way it is right now. And then there's a question of what we're actually aiming for, because if we're aiming for a kind of a system equilibrium, which I think circular economy theory and few nexus theory can bring about, and bring about some institutional efficiencies, is that necessarily what we want? Do we want the current system to remain the same by just stopping the wastage of resources that's really threatening the sustainability of the current economic and political system? This is my final slide on future direction, but there's for me a need to move away from the struggle for control of the waste commodity frontier, this economic emphasis on solving the problem of waste with economic instruments, and then consumer-oriented waste policies that really emphasize policies of care, and that people should just take voluntary responsibility for waste in their area. Needs to confront the fact that there's a lot of diversity and inequality in these contexts, that life is temporary, that life is short, and that people are free not to care. It may sound pessimistic, but I think it's something quite important. And then, importantly, I think waste valorization can't catalyze consolidation of institutionalized power, and this is something that always happens very subtly. My idea is that it must erode the ideological foundations of inequality and waste, the kind of for-profit, growth-oriented development model of cities. And lastly, how to do that, I think critical research to just counter the rhetoric that emphasizes economic emancipation from structural inequality and biophysical sustainability, to open up politics, broaden out knowledge, and let go material commitments. I think for that to happen, there needs to be a space for social dissent, difference and disruption of waste systems. And rather than circular economics, maybe circular politics that really reconnects people at the very bottom, voters, with decision makers in a more dialogical way. And a sort of interjurisdictional, local, national, cross-sectional power nexus. There's been some call for observatories to just challenge this top-down, if I can put it that way, localization of eco-modernism that sustains polluters, more technical arguments to the problem, and rather get more social arguments in that conversation. Thanks, Adina. That's it from me. And here are some key references.
Great. That's a very interesting talk, Matt. I have a quick question for you. I was intrigued by the fact that you said that across all cases, you found that it is important for the higher up levels of decision makers to have the image that they care about social justice and equality in the area. And I was struck by the use of your word image. Does that not translate to practice? Or do they make an effort to translate that to practice? Because sometimes, you know, you just want to say things, but you're not making an effort to actually act upon them.
I mean, I'm getting that from the social network analysis I did. And in there, it had to be online just because of what was happening last year. So I very much got this purposeful projection of identity from these institutions. And in some cases, for example, I mean, especially in the UK, in Bristol, it was difficult for me to really categorize institutions as a social enterprise, an NGO, or a business. What is this thing? Because many businesses have this very overt identity online as an institution that very much prioritizes social responsibility. So yes, I mean, in the qualitative analysis that I've been doing, it very much refutes some of the self-statements from these institutions that they care. And I mean, people on the ground that I've spoken to have given me an idea that, you know, they have different priorities from the ones that they publicly announce. In practice, it's not quite the same, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's the impression I got. Anybody has other questions for Matt? If not, I think our next speaker is Erica, and we're moving to Brazil.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen, full screen?
We can see your, yeah, now we can see it as a full screen.
So I work in São Paulo Natura Lab, and my work, my project of postdoctorate, it's part of the Energy Water Nexus governance project. And I work in a business administration area in Unicamp with Professor Esther, like a supervisor of this ULL laboratory. And the big objective of the laboratory, São Paulo Natura Lab, it's being an institution focused on innovation in sustainability in food production. And according to the governance of waste fuel consortium, we have two objectives. And my work, it's part of the first objectives. It's map and model the level of sustainability of the fuel systems for two pilots. And the challenge of this project, it's about the area that we work in. It's a mega metropolitan region, is a green belt to produce food, and is in Atlantic forest border. So how I can challenge, achieve the objective through the system dynamic simulations of agriculture production modes for 5 types of production. Well, the system dynamics modeling is being developed for 5 production modes. We are developing the models with a team members responsible for this front, like Professors Esther, Paulo, and Barbara, and the researchers Alessandro and Renato. And the systems of conventional, it's a part of work of Renato. Renato is working in detail, and we present the same systems, the conventional and agroecological systems. The unique difference is the input of the model for the both systems. Well, the other kinds of models, it's aquaponics and hydroponics. The data collected for conventional and agroecological systems were collected in Ibiúna and Parelheiros in a greenbelt area to production foods. And aquaponics was collected by with the Symbiotech company. It's a company to aquaponics, specific to aquaponics. And for hydroponics were collected with the G Watanabe. It's a company in Ibiúna City. And for this model, we work with two kinds of models. One model with solution reuse and another without reuse the solution concentrate. This is the flow chart of aquaponic systems, one of the example of the models that we are working. And all the models were based on social environment indicators. So that these indicators can direct the transitions to sustainable systems. The carbon and the water footprint represent the environmental footprints. The trophic state index, it's a proxy of eutrophication systems. And like social indicators, we have two indicators, the Land Social Development Index and the net profit. Here we can observe the model, the print of the model AnyLogic in AnyLogic software with the 5 indicators. And the model contains 5 indicators, but two of these indicators is in duplicate form because the both pilot regions, there is difference about the community support agriculture. For example, in Parelheiros, we have a big movement of stakeholders, engagement of stakeholders. So the CSA to Parelheiros is higher than to compare it to Ibiúna. And another duplicate indicators, it's for the trophic state index. This is because both regions, the two regions, it's located in distinct hydrographic basins. And with this, we have different kinds of climate conditions, dilution rate of rivers, precipitation, climate, and another specific kinds of conditions in this area. Well, this is a screen running for the model in AnyLogic software with the model and with the charts for each kind of indicators. And the analysis will be carried out through case and effect relations as a policy-making subset. And it's important to note that the controls used for the case and effects relationships represent the factors related to each indicator. Based on this strategy, we can we can develop the different scenarios like optimistic, neutral, pessimistic, and with this we can simulate different kinds of comportments. Here I'll show fastly a screen of the AnyLogic software, and it's a recording of the aquaponics models running, and we can note the 2 lines of food production. The first, it's line for fish production, and the second, it's a line for vegetables production. And in this model, it's possible to check, to solve the correlations through parameters and variables, dynamic variables presenting the production process, like the inputs and outputs. And it is also possible to observe the indicators represented by charts and the respective controls to analyze the different scenarios for some indicators, some social environment indicators. And it's important to mention that the simulations will be developed for all food productions in the same way. For example, the same indicators that we use in the conventional or agroecological production, system productions, we will use in the hydroponics and aquaponics production too. And with these controls, we will simulation many kinds of iterations between the factors, between the parameters, to develop these different kinds of scenarios. Well, like conclusions, for finishing, the results will be possible to analyze the sustainability for different kinds of production systems through 5 social environment indicators. And with this development of alternative predictive scenarios for decision making, and how kind of decision makers could be get a result, a better result, like through the comparisons between production systems, could be a changing or a replacing system in the systems models, or an integration systems. For example, between a conventional plus aquaponics or hydroponics plus aquaponics systems. It's different kinds of solution and different kinds of make decisions. And next stop for this kind of, for this project, my part of project, it's to do a optimization of models for automatic comparisons between different kinds of food productions. So will be more easy to get the results for for example, for the stakeholders, for the companies, to get different solutions for their business. Well, thank you. This is my contact.
Thank you, Erica. That is really fascinating. I was very impressed by this interactive tool or simulation that you have. And I'm wondering, are you planning to have this program shared globally in some kind of publication, and whether it is adaptable, where people can change the code a little bit and make it useful for their needs?
Well, this kind of all models that we are working will be possible to adapt it to the local region. For example, just to change the inputs, like the climate conditions, or like the social development index, you change the inputs. And these social environment indicators will be possible to be replicable for all areas. And to choose, to get in the final, would make decisions, for example, to integration of systems or changing some systems, or for example, like phosphorus, to how much you need to reduce the phosphorus to get the results, good results, to control the eutrophication systems in the regions.
Well, that also sounds, this model that you have, this simulation, sounds like a very interesting and useful education tool for classes that teach agroecology or even economics of food production. Is that something that you're thinking of using in that context? Like preparing it for people who teach these topics to use in their class?
Yes, for example, for aquaponics or hydroponics systems, it's models that with real results, with real data from companies. So it's just necessary to change the, how can I say, the size of the plant, of the installation, like the land use, the area, and change the inputs, and change, for example, the inputs for scenarios. So it's good for education because with these charts, with this more didactic running, it's possible to show in a simple view the good results and the changing with the controls. How is the results for the good scenario or the bad scenarios, for example, for 5 years projection, 10 years, 20 years. So I think it's a good tools for education too.
Wonderful. I guess with that, unless somebody else has any question, we will move to Renato and then Alessandro, who are going to follow up and present their application of this. Renato, you next.
Hi. Yeah, just a minute for.
Sorry, my control blocked to stop sharing. Now it's okay.
We can see your screen, Renato.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. I am Renato Lopez, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to share our experience here in Sao Paulo, where our laboratory is the nature. For the execution, just a minute. It's blocked. For the execution of this research, there are several collaborating institutions, such as the University of Campinas, the School of Agricultural Engineering, FEAGRE, funding agencies such FAPESP and CNPq. In addition to our strategic partner, Sabesp, which is a Brazilian water and waste manager company in the Sao Paulo state. It provides water and sewage service to residential, commercial, and industrial users in the Sao Paulo metropolitan region. It is the largest water and waste management company in Latin America. Well, to present myself better, I am Renato. I am Peruvian and engineering in renewable natural resources. I have a master's degree in water and soil, and I am currently a PhD student in agricultural engineering, both from FEAGRE Unicamp in Campinas, Sao Paulo. I will present my project called Modeling Tool for Water Resource Quality Monitoring. I'll start by telling about us here in Sao Paulo, to be more specific about the metropolitan region of Sao Paulo. It is composed of 39 municipalities, including the state capital, Sao Paulo City. According to data from IBGE, the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, its gross domestic product is approximately 19% of Brazilian GDP, with almost 8,000 square kilometers of total area and population close by 22 million inhabitants. It is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world. So what is the problem? Here we can see the impact of more than 120 years of development. This development involved an increase in the population, an increase in industrialization, and also a development of agriculture. It also caused an increase in demand for food, which with the Green Revolution increased demand for chemicals fertilizer, which has a negative impact on water quality. In addition, climate change enhances this effect. So this is our problem. Eutrophication. Eutrophication, which refers to the enrichment of nutrients in an aquatic ecosystem, mainly inorganic nutrients, nitrogen, and phosphorus, which causes observed algal bloom. And where is the problem? To have an idea. The problem is here in the Guarapiranga Reservoir, in the south of metropolitan region of Sao Paulo, which has an area of almost 34 square kilometers, a capacity of 171 million cubic meters of water, supplies 5.8 million people, and is managed by our partner Sabesp. In this way, our project aims to develop a water quality management model based on system dynamic model, develop a model to provide a support tool for decision makers to improve their understanding of complex and dynamic behavior of water used in agricultural systems, mapping these functionalities and proposing solutions. Our methodological proposal consists of 3 phases: characterization, modeling, and model resolution. In the first phase, we did research, problem definition, literature review, analysis of existing models, potential indicators, identification, relevance analysis, process mapping, identification of stakeholders. The second phase includes variables and indicator selections, data and measuring collection, definition of causal hypothesis, system inputs and outputs analysis, definition of mathematical functions, parameterization of the model in the software. And finally, during the third phase, we will computational simulation, verification, validation, dynamic analysis, or scenarios analysis, and proposal for decisions. The modeling structure is based on the development of ecological risk model using the Aquatox software. It is a software developed and used by an environmental protection agency of the United States. We chose this software because simulation model that links We chose this software because simulation model that links pollutants to aquatic life, integrate fate and ecological effects, can simulate many more types of organisms with more realism than most other water quality models. Peer-reviewed by independent panels and several published reviews, and it is distributed by US EPA. It is an open source. Have an open source code. Here we have some image of the construction of the ecological risk model of the Guarapiranga Reservoir, from which we have some preliminary results to observe the seasonal behavior of some nutrients, such ammonia, ionized and not ionized, nitrate, and phosphorus. From the linear relationship based of based on Aquatox model, the causal loop diagram was formulated, which is a qualitative representation. It's a qualitative representation of the model. This allows the construction of the stock and flow model, which shows the interrelationship between the variables of the system, which is a quantitative represents of the model. System dynamics is an approach to understand the behavior of complex systems over time. It deals with internal feedback loops and time delay that affect the behavior of the entire system. The basis of the methodology is the recognition that the structure of any system is just as important in determining its behavior as the individual components themselves. This model of system dynamic will be built with the software AnyLogic. We chose AnyLogic because AnyLogic is a multi-method system modeling tool. It supports agent-based, discrete event, and system dynamic simulation methodologies. And this includes the point of food production, and this is linked with the model presented by Dr. Erica. We have expected contribution to provide a robust support tool for decision makers to achieve sustainable water resource management and agricultural development. Thank you so much. And as the famous Cuban singer Celia Cruz said, my English is not very good looking, but I'm very glad to say that I enjoyed this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Renato. That was very nice talk. Does anybody have any questions for Renato? If so, you can unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we can move to Alessandro for the sake of time, since we're running towards the end. And then since their talks are related, we can ask both of them at the end. And thanks for sharing, Alessandro. We can see your screen, but not in presenter mode. So if you want to go to presenter mode, there, now it's good. Go ahead. Alessandro, you're muted maybe?
Or maybe you have headphones in and not on your ear or something?
Because we can't hear you. We see your screen, but we can't hear you. Can you hear us, Alessandro?
Yes, he can. He's nodding. No, we still can't hear you.
Yeah, we still can't hear you, no.
Alessandro, você está me escutando? Eu acho que você está com o microfone desligado, porque a gente não está te escutando. Desativou, mas eu acho que não tem som. Não, nada.
Maybe you can disconnect.
Hello.
Perfect. Now we can.
Agora sim. Agora sim.
See.
Sorry. Good afternoon.
Are you there, Alessandro?
Yes, I'm trying to share.
We can see your screen. Just go to presenter mode.
You can see the present?
Yes, we can see the PowerPoint, but if you want to show us just the slide and not the, the left sidebar with all the slides, you have to go to presenter mode. Otherwise, it's fine like that as well.
Alessandro, dá um clique na apresentação, sabe? Lá embaixo tem um negocinho
Are you seeing? Can you see?
Yeah, that's okay. You can just start your presentation. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Edna for organizing this meeting and the opportunity. I will present a continuation of our research in urban living laboratory São Paulo in Natura Lab. I am collaborative researcher at São Paulo, School of Applied Sciences School of the University of Campinas. And as a central part of this project of the São Paulo Natura Lab, I need to thank our main supporters. And
sorry, I can't see anything. I can't see the presentation.
Yeah, you need to put it on presenter mode and move the slides. I see your screen, but not, the slide is not forwarding. Now it's not there. Share, no. Alessandro, share your screen.
Try the F5.
But share your screen.
I tried to share my screen. Let me see.
I can see your screen now.
I can see it now.
Okay. But you have to make sure you're moving forward with your slides. But go ahead. So we're on slide 3 now.
Yes, thank you. I'm present the second part of our research, and our objective central is to be an innovation-driven institution for a sustainable food system. And I will present my part of the work, my research, that is urban sustainability prospecting scenarios on water, food, and energy nexus using the Delft instrument. And we are participating in the second procedure that Erica and Renato present this first part. I'm trying to put it here. And the first procedure is that was described by Renato and Erica, and I will present the developed of the second procedure that we work with the Delft Foresight tool analysis with agents of more than 40 institutions network that's working together with us. And I will show before that is based in the developed that will disseminate that consists in a sustainable innovation decision-making tool with multi-criteria indicators. And we will apply a questionnaire, Delft questionnaire, with these stakeholders of these institutions. The central objective of this Delphi project is prospecting circular economy scenarios in two areas that we are studying in São Paulo State, and São Paulo cities, in order to design future conditions of greater sustainability for these communities. And we are doing an replicable tool, and we think it's possible to use this knowledge in other scenarios. We are focusing in that too. And within the scope of Belmont Consortium, this Delphi project will collectively design the conditions to be achieved in future to make the food, energy, water systems more sustainable. And we expect how the impact of Delphi as the results of Delphi in future design desired by agents of the food, energy, water systems of São Paulo Natura Lab will be the basis for the policy propositions and systematic analysis of the fuel links. In this way, the future will be created by choices we make today from scenarios never thought before, created and defined collectively by Delphi. We explored these scenarios through sustainability indicators, such as the direct marketing index or community-supported agriculture index that Erica showed the physical aspects, or the index of future technological adoption under ideal credit conditions, or a perfect funding scenario. We have another others, stakeholders of water sanitation companies, Secretary of Infrastructure and Environment, Secretary of Agriculture and Supply, all of São Paulo State, NGOs, cooperatives, Secretary of Agriculture of Ibiúna City, City of São Paulo, Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation, Embrapa, several units, and environmental company, environmental public ministry, and others. And that is the decision tool, multi-criteria decision making analysis that I have talked about. And we have here the three main aspects that we are looking for in the project in Natura Lab. Erica and Renato has presented the physical and material conditions analysis, and in Delphi, we are focusing attributes of community, but we are asking in Delphi questionnaire all of these level 2 indicators. For example, water footprint, eutrophication, carbon footprint, net profit, and land social development index that Erica has showed. Our indicator level that I'm analyzing in my project, the future technological adoption index, productive interaction index, structural of contract index, and another part is related with legal and regulatory issues, and all of these indicators that I think you can see very well there. We are asking in the questionnaire. We yet analyze these questionnaires. We are applying this, and because this I don't prepare the conclusion analysis, but I will show you before and the presentation our questionnaire, and I will ask you that before after we do the English version, I have only a Google Translate here to show you, but I need your help in asking this English version, that because we will put it together in our stakeholder analysis, and it is very useful if you can contribute with this. I will send it by email. And only an example of this first question, I do the questionnaire with direct affirmatives of these indicators. It do an affirmative, and after this, I ask on scale 1 to 9, where 1 would be strongly disagree of this affirmative, or 9 strongly agree. And each question has to self-evaluation. We analyze individually the question, and open comments that you can criticize or make observations or criticize the question, or anything you want to ask or to answer here. And this, I thank you for attention, my contact, and I expect you can contribute to asking the questionnaire and then end of this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro. I'm at least looking forward to see the English translation of your questionnaire. It would be really interesting to have a look at that and provide feedback. Do we have any questions for Alessandro? If you do, please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. And Alessandro, there you go. Jana, go ahead.
I have a question for Alessandro, please. Alessandro, thank you for your presentation. It's really interesting stuff. If you remember, Matt earlier was talking about the effect of waste reutilization, and that often it's not considered to what extent sort of sustainability developments actually take equity issues into account. Did in your Delphi social equity come up? Is this something which your stakeholders considered as relevant in making decisions on how we should change our systems to achieve greater sustainability? Did social equity come up as well?
Hi, Hi, Anna. Thank you for a question. In this first round, we make direct questions related to this indicator. And we have one indicator that is more complex, and I think we will do a second round, sorry, of Delphi because of this. And this is the 5 that no, I'm not sharing. This indicator has 5 sub-indicators that talk about social aspects, and this is a central indicator for us. And we asked in general in this first questionnaire, but we will do a second multiple choice or semi-structural questionnaire to have a more complex answer to this question.
Thank you. That's going to be interesting to hear your results as well. And I think it would also, I'm suspecting, also interesting for Matt perhaps to learn from you. But thank you. My camera stopped working. I have no idea why, so that's why I'm not showing my face.
Maybe it's reminding us that we're at the end of our 2 hours here. So let's say if anyone else has any questions to any of our speakers, go ahead. Otherwise, let's thank them all again for these really nice and comprehensive presentations. And I remind you again to send me your PowerPoint so we can put them on the webpage. Any questions from everyone?
No question. Just thank you very much, everybody. I really have enjoyed this afternoon. It's been fantastic. So thanks very much.
Yeah, it's really nice to finally hear what all the participants are doing, and to actually see that what you're doing at different levels links to each other. So there is some commonality here, and we're seeing that, you know, we are functioning as a collaborative group of projects, despite the fact that we're in such different locations and contexts. Okay, so thank you all again, and we'll send information about our next webinar. And good luck with finishing your projects, all the students and postdocs there. Looking forward to see this in the published literature.
Yes, absolutely.
Well done and good luck, everyone. Really nice work.
Bye.
Interesting stuff. Bye.
Bye-bye.